Good afternoon. Welcome to the last session of JNUC 2019. I know that all of you want to be here. That's what I like about the last session. Have you enjoyed this year's JNUC? It's been good. It's been good. So my name is Dan Snelson, and I am a senior system engineer with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We are frequently called Mormons because of our belief in a volume of companion scripture to the Holy Bible called the Book of Mormon. So let's talk about your internal beta test program and how you can allow your users to opt in and opt out via self-service. So here's our agenda. We'll first discuss the three great motivators for why we beta test. We'll then cover the nuts and bolts of what a Jamf Pro admin will do on the back end to allow your users to opt in and opt out via self-service. And once users have opted in to be a beta tester, we'll put it all together with policy scope. We'll then conclude by discussing some lessons we've learned to help increase end-user engagement and feedback. So let's discuss the three great motivators for why we beta test. The first of the three great motivators is fear. We test policies because we're afraid what might happen if we don't test policies. While it's better to test out of fear than to not test at all, when fear is our sole motivation, we'll actually stop testing when we're no longer afraid. For example, you probably aren't too fearful of pushing out a routine update to Google Chrome. And with the exception of at least the version released on Monday, September 17th, 2018, you'd be right. Again, while it's better to test out of fear than to not test at all, one of the key limitations of fear as a motivator is when the instrument which causes the fear is no longer present, the motivation quickly stops. For example, how many of us were motivated to attend high school on a school day when both of our parents were out of town? The second of the three great motivators is duty. Now we're moving up the motivation pyramid. We test our policies because we are responsible administrators. And after all, it's our duty to test. And being responsible administrators means that we always perform all of our job functions as assigned because that's the duty of a responsible administrator. Except for when we feel no sense of duty to test our policies. Duty has the same key limitation as fear. When the instrument which causes the sense of duty is no longer present, the motivation quickly stops. For example, we may feel a sense of duty to test all of our policies, but there's a group of developers who have local admin rights and they auto-update Google Chrome all the time, and they haven't reported any issues with the latest version. I'll just push it out. No sense of duty, no motivation to test. The top of our motivation pyramid is love. If the word love makes you uncomfortable, substitute professionalism. Professionals do their job when they feel the least like doing it. We test policies because we love our users. We love what our enterprise is trying to accomplish, and we don't want to hinder its progress because of a lack of diligence on our part. We actually love to test. We love feedback. We love finding out something didn't work for a use case we haven't thought of ourselves. Now, the reason why love is at the top of our motivation pyramid is because it is the top. Love is the great self-sustaining motivator. Because I love my users, especially my opt-in beta testers, I don't want to slow them down in their primary job functions. None of our opt-in beta testers are paid to test. They all have real jobs. We leave the dedicated testing nonsense for the Microsoft Windows side of the house. Now, if you currently don't have any users worthy of your love, hopefully, as they opt in to your beta test program and you get to know them, you will begin to love them. All right, let's move on to the nuts and bolts of what a Jamf Pro admin will do on the back end to allow your users to opt in and opt out of your beta test program via self-service. We'll start with a demo. So let's look at a demo from the user's point of view. At the church, we call self-service the Workforce App Store. Before a user opts in to be a beta tester, the testing category has a single policy. The user reviews the detailed description and clicks opt-in. The user is welcomed and then directed to join a private Yammer group. After refreshing self-service, the testing category shows exactly what the user was after, Catalina. Let's switch to Jamf Pro and define the extension attribute we'll use to categorize the computer records. We'll navigate to Settings, Computer Management, Extension Attributes. We'll click New and define our testing level EA as a pop-up menu. We'll then add 3 options, clicking Save for each row: Alpha, Beta, and Gamma. We'll then save the EA itself. Great. So now we have a testing level extension attribute, which is a pop-up menu input type that will be displayed in the extension attribute section with 3 options: Alpha, Beta, Gamma. Let's take a moment to discuss these 3 choices. Alpha is only for your computers and VMs. In fact, you may decide you don't want to classify your production computer as alpha, just to make sure you don't break anything on your production Mac. Beta is just for your immediate team's computers. After you've tested your policies on your alpha machines, it's time to have your immediate team confirm all is working as expected. Gamma is for all other testers. This is kind of like how Led Zeppelin released their song Houses of the Holy on their 1975 Physical Graffiti album, not on the previous album of the same name. Your opt-in beta testers will have their computers assigned to the Gamma testing level. All right, let's make some smart groups. We'll select Computers, Smart Computer Groups, and then click New. Enter the display name of Testing Alpha Group, then click Criteria, click Add, then click Show Advanced Criteria. Scroll the alphabetical list and locate testing level. Click Choose. Leave the operator on the Is option and enter Alpha for the value and click Save. We'll then clone this for the Beta Smart Group. And then we'll clone for the Gamma Smart Group. Clicking Done, we can see our 3 newly added smart groups. Let's add one more smart group, this one for users which have not opted in to be testers. We'll call this testing none. We'll change the operator to like and delete the contents of the value field so it's blank. And then we'll click Save. So now we have 3 computers assigned to the Testing None Smart Computer Group. Existing and new computers will be assigned automatically to the Testing None Smart Computer Group because, by default, the value for the testing level extension attribute will be blank until it's changed by one of the other 3 values. We're almost ready to start leveraging Jamf Pro's API to allow users to opt in and opt out via self-service. But before we do, let's talk about some API alternatives. Our first API alternative is to manually update the records right within Jamf Pro. And here's what this looks like. The 4 testing-related smart groups have been added to our Jamf Pro dashboard, and you can see that all 3 computers are assigned to the default of testing none. Additionally, the testing level extension attribute has been added to our default inventory display, and we can see that these 3 computers have not been added to any testing group. Let's start with editing the last computer record. We'll navigate to Extension Attributes, click Edit in the upper right, specify a testing level of alpha, and then we'll click Save. Let's repeat that for the other 2 computer records. Now, all 3 computers have been assigned to a testing level. Reviewing the computer records, we can see that testing level shows the various values. So, if your needs are modest, this is a great place to start with your beta test program. You can always circle back and add the API racing stripes later. If you have more robust needs and don't immediately have time to leverage the API via self-service, the MUT may be just what you're looking for. You can use Mike's app to mass assign computers to either alpha, beta, or gamma by uploading a single CSV. And let's take a brief look at those steps. So you'll download the MUT from the Mac App Store. When prompted for credentials, if you don't already have a dedicated API user with read-write access, you can simply log in using the same credentials you use to log into the Jamf Pro console. Click Download CSV Templates, and then complete the computer template. You'll notice I've added a column T at the end, named it EA_16, and then populated it with the various values which match the EA's pop-up options. The column is titled EA_16 because the ID number of the testing level attribute is 16. We'll then upload this CSV and mass update the computer records. Now for the fun part, leveraging the Jamf Pro API via self-service. So let's break this down into 4 sections. We'll first review the API permissions that are required to modify the testing level computer extension attribute. We'll then dig into the script that actually updates the extension attribute. And with those in place, we can then create the policies to opt in and opt out. So here are the permissions the API dedicated Jamf Pro account will need to update computer extension attributes. This information is detailed on my GitHub page. Let's slow things down a bit and dig into the script which updates the extension attribute, which you can find on GitHub. So in the script itself, you'll need to configure the API URL, the salt, and the passphrase variables. If you're not yet using encrypted script parameters, now is the perfect time to start. My script includes a reference to Jamf's encrypted script parameters GitHub page. The last line shown here, no edits needed below this line, means that all of the good stuff follows. So starting with the top line, read current value. Once we know the computer's UUID from the previous variable section, we can then select the computer's record in Jamf Pro to read the given extension attribute's current value as shown by the variable API read. The current value is then echoed out. In the middle block, construct the API data. We first set the API data variable to the required format with the desired value. Then the API post variable is assembled and then echoed out to actually perform the update. I tried to do this as a one-liner and with XPath, and I could not pull it off. The last block, read the new value, is nearly identical to the first block. When adding the script to Jamf Pro, be sure to check out the GitHub page to specify the correct parameter labels under script options. So let's dive even deeper into the API-related commands. So open a browser to GitHub and locate the extension attribute update script. Let's view this as raw so we can zoom in a bit. Now for this demo, I've previously defined all of the required variables off camera for security reasons. So let's paste in the API read variable and then echo it out to see what value we get. Gamma, good, good. So then let's try each command of the API read variables to make sure we know what's going on. And we'll start with the curl command. So the curl command works, but it just gives us lots of data. Let's format this output as XML so that it's a little easier to read. Okay, good. Now we have information. So adding grep should help us zero in on the single EA we're after. Okay, now we're in the ballpark. A final awk should help us get just the value of the testing level. All right, we got it, gamma. So now let's test drive the API post command. On the right in terminal, we'll first confirm the current value. So the current value is gamma. And now let's manually edit the value for EA value. We'll set it to alpha. Let's define the API data variable in our terminal session. As well as the API post variable. And then we'll echo out the variable to actually perform the change. All right, clearing the terminal and rerunning the curl command will double check our work. All right, alpha, hey, it worked. So now we've got a pretty good understanding of what the extension attribute update script will do. So let's build some policies. So with the correct API permissions and the extension attribute update script tested and in place, we're ready to create the opt-in policy. So under general, specify the execution frequency of ongoing. In the script section itself, add the extension attribute update script and complete the parameter values we specified when creating the script. Now, this is optional. Add the file and processes section and add Jamf manage to the execute command field. I found this helpful to get restricted software records to be honored more quickly. The policy is scoped to all managed clients with no limitations and 3 exclusions. Since this is the policy to opt in, we're going to exclude it from computers which are already members of the smart groups we've previously defined. We'll make the policy available in self-service and enter a description. Ours is quite verbose, and there is no user interaction. So as a reminder, here's what the policy looks like from the end user's perspective. So when they first go to the testing category, there's a single policy. They review the detailed description, click opt-in, the user is then welcomed, and they are redirected to a private Yammer group. And then once they refresh self-service, they'll see the policy they were after the whole time, Catalina. All right, the policy to opt out is nearly identical. It's nearly an identical clone to the opt-in policy. So to create the opt-out policy, we'll start by cloning the opt-in policy. After updating the policy name in the general section, the critical modification is to change the EA value field to the word none, which is a key word in the extension attribute update script. Modify the exclusion section of the policy scope to exclude computers which have not opted in, making the opt-out policy only available to those who have previously opted in. Update the self-service description as desired, click Save. So let's put this all together with policy scope. Now that a user has opted in to be a beta tester, they'll see the policies you're currently testing. We assign ours to a testing category in self-service. They'll also see any patch policies you're testing. So let's take a look at the scope of both policies and patch policies. Our policy to test Cisco Jabber is targeted to all managed clients with no limitations and 2 exclusions. It has passed my personal testing and is now with the team to validate that it works for them. Our policy for WebEx meetings is also targeted to all managed clients with no limitations, but is excluded from every group except alpha because I'm still validating the post-install pre-population of the username that it works as expected. When I'm satisfied the policy is ready for the team to test, I'll remove the testing beta group exclusion, and our internal team can test it. For Enterprise Connect, it is scoped to all managed clients with no limitations and is available to all opt-in beta testers. So patch policies are similar. So let's take a look at the Microsoft Word Patch Management Software title. We've completed all of the definitions for all the versions. Each of our patch management software titles have two patch policies, one for beta tester and one for automatic. So the beta tester policies are available in self-service. They're scoped to all managed clients with no limitations, but they're excluded from testing none. The automatic patch policies are set to automatic, to install automatically for all managed clients with no exclusions. Now we do exclude computers which happen to temporarily be in what we call presentation mode, so that we don't interrupt somebody if they're in the middle of a presentation. So let's talk about end user engagement and feedback. A few years ago, when we had a software title available for testing, we would spam our opt-in testers with a HTML formatted email. They looked fairly nice, but I mistakenly asked users to please reply to this email with your experience. Big mistake. Later that same year, we got fancier and introduced a testing feedback survey. And then we got even fancier and asked for feedback via our private Yammer group. Now our testers receive an auto-generated email from Yammer each time we post an announcement. And so here's what our private Yammer group looks like. I include screenshots of where in self-service the user will find the policy to test. And here's what the testing feedback survey looks like. We're going to copy the current version of Google Chrome. So we provide the user an overview. And then ask them to specify the software title and its version. The user can also provide any version-specific comments. Since the survey doesn't require a login, we prompt the user for their username. And then we end with some Net Promoter Score type questions. Now, how can you continue to motivate your users to stay opted in? Early on, we had users opt in, get the software they wanted, and then opt out. So now we deploy a configuration profile named Apple Software Updates to all managed clients, and we exclude our opt-in beta testers. So now, if a user opts out, they will again be in scope of the Apple Software Updates configuration profile, which enforces a delay for Apple software updates. Carrot, stick, you decide. Well, that's all there is to it. So here's a few takeaways. First, learn to love your opt-in beta testers. Here's my GitHub page. There is no API required to start. You can get started right away by creating the extension attribute today and then using Jamf Pro or the MUT to update the key computer records. Add the API erasing stripes later and start testing today. If you need a goal for 2020, consider deploying a stage lane next year. If you're serious about testing and you love your users, you'll need at least one other lane. Every Jamf customer can request to have access to a customer test and development activation code in their My Assets section of Jamf Nation. You can contact your Jamf customer success specialist for more information. When I first started out testing, I had 3 lanes: dev, stage, and prod. Dev has a couple of VMs enrolled, and stage was nearly identical to prod, nearly. I had enrolled all of our test lab Macs in the stage lane, and I would test policies, which made me worried or afraid. That was about it. Then a couple of years ago, I decided to enroll humans in our stage lane, one of which is my direct manager. So now I am highly motivated, out of fear, duty, and love, to keep stage in sync with prod. And having a stage lane has proved indispensable when testing new versions of Jamf Pro and advanced features like conditional access with Microsoft Intune. Just indispensable. I thank everybody for coming. What questions can I answer?
Thank you. So what percentage of your user base opts in without any encouragement, and what percentage of those people actually return surveys?
That's an excellent question. So just before I came to JNUC, I had another policy, which I didn't show you, which encouraged people to opt in. And knowing that Catalina was about to be released, we think we're going to release it when I get back, we had a bunch of people opt in. And so when I say a bunch, we're probably 13% of our users are testers right now. The new users are the ones who tend to fill out the surveys. And so we, at the church, we have a product manager who owns the product. He owns Mac OS, and I'm the engineer for it. So he's the one who reviews the feedback. And a lot of times, it's the no news is good news. The people will complain if something's broke. But we'll typically, there's nobody who said it didn't work, and so we'll have to go. Does that answer your question?
It does. And to follow up, do you think you'd get responses using like a Slack channel or something where people could go in just kind of and comment or complain or ask questions, right? Kind of a direct line to you and other testers.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We don't use Slack at the church, we use Microsoft Teams, but I've been thinking about moving from Yammer to Teams in 2020, because then you get that more interaction.
Right.
I try to keep on top of Yammer, but that's a good idea.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, very nice. You show something about presentation mode. How do you determine that?
So users with presentation mode, users can log in to self-service, and they'll click a button that puts their computer in presentation mode for 2 hours.
Okay.
And so it runs a launch daemon. They get scoped into a different group that has a different configuration profile where the screensaver won't come on and the computer won't go to sleep. And I've got a whole very interesting story about a very high-level individual that motivated us to write that.
Okay, so
But that's what
basically
presentation mode is.
2 hour slot, basically.
Yeah.
So, okay, great, thank you.
Sorry. So you always need at least two policies then, right? One for production and one for your testers?
Uh,
Or
that,
did I
so
misunderstand that?
you don't necessarily have to have multiple policies. So for example, our Catalina policies, we've got 3 that are Catalina related. One is caching the installer. One is notifying the user that the installer has been cached. And then one is calling start OS install. So those policies currently are excluded from testing none. So as soon as my product manager blesses Catalina, I'll just go in and edit those policies and I'll remove those exclusions. So it's the very same policy that they will run. In the examples I showed you, we did have policies to test Cisco WebEx and test Enterprise Connect and things like that. So you can go either direction. Take your normal policies, exclude people, create dedicated testing policies, whatever you like. Good question.
Have you found it's helped the customer experience? Like, do people feel more involved? Like, have your complainers opted into your test group? And has it helped kind of with that, some of the complaints or people who are not happy anytime things change?
I think we're, yeah, the short answer to your question is yes. I'm blessed to work for a church, and so the people tend to be nice. They tend to be nicer than at other enterprises I've worked at, but they're still, complainers, and this has helped. I've had complainers who have had to opt out because the pace at which we test was too much for them. This individual I'm thinking of was traveling into Europe, and the policies, we let them defer software updates. They run daily. I'll sometimes flush those logs multiple times a day and just, push them through the pipeline to make, we got to have this tested. And they've had to opt out because they just couldn't keep up with the pace. And we're always sad to see them go. And sometimes I'll send a private message to them on Yammer. Hey, when you're back in the country, come, hop back in. Good question. Okay, this side of the room needs questions. There we go.
Kind of two things. Do you also, I saw like a lot in self-service, do you also push like updates to your test users, or is it all just kind of each individual test policy is opt-in?
So the patch policies, they have 3 days to go and execute them themselves, or otherwise the hammer comes down, right? And so we give them like a 3-day window to go test them. Within 4 days, the policy has executed. You've seen patch policies, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
put a deadline on them and they run, and then we validate that the version of Chrome is going to work, and away we go. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and then the other one is you mentioned kind of that you had it for the people not in there. You have a config profile that delays software updates.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So with, help me remember which version that was introduced. Was that 10.13? So you can push out a configuration profile which delays software updates, and
Like
we
it's
do
a certain
28
number of
days.
days after Apple releases it that they
Yeah.
did not know that was an option. I'm going to.
And those, the type of people who do not like that delay, right? I mean, they want it now, and you can get it. All you got to do is opt in. And then we also block the OS installers. Like right now, I keep getting emails. I just get a kick out of the same individual hitting that. What's the definition of insanity, right? And, all they got to do is opt in, and then they could run that. So, and I didn't mention this, we let anybody opt in. Anybody can opt in. We don't exclude anyone. So.
Anyone else have questions? Okay, I'll say thank you. If you'll please complete the survey in the JNUC app,
That helps me get tangible feedback to my boss and my boss's boss and my boss's boss's boss.